This episode is in partnership with Authority Magazine. Authority Magazine, a Medium publication, is devoted to sharing in-depth and interesting interviews featuring people who are authorities in business, pop culture, wellness, social impact, and tech.
Today we are talking with the GOAT, legendary football player inducted into both the Canadian Football Hall of Fame and Georgia-Florida Game Hall of Fame.
Ben Zambiasi was a giant on and off the field.
His playing career took him from Georgia to the Canadian Football League, but that was only the beginning of his story. Ben, welcome to Believe in People.
Thank you, Amy. Nice to be here. Join you too.
We're thrilled that you're here. Very excited. I wanted to ask you, what inspired you to pursue a career in football?
Well, you know what? It was kind of found me. And because you go through stages, right? Of progression and so I started very young, kind of similar to if I was born in Canada, I probably would have been on skates and been a hockey player. But because I wasn't, and my dad was in the military, my first taste of putting the pads on was grade 3 in Germany. And I was a little bit big for my age, but I didn't make, age-wise, I wasn't eligible. But the football season had begun, and I was always seeing these kids practice football on my walk home from school in the area that we lived. It would be like our backyard. And one day I just stopped, and one of the coaches said, "Hey, are you on a football team?" And I said, "No. Do you want to be on one?" I said, "Yes." They said, "Okay." So we went down to the basement of I would call it like a condominium style living quarters, and he opened up the cage and fitted me up with a helmet, shoulder pads, thigh pads, knee pads, a pair of football pants, and I had running shoes on anyway at the time. And that was my first taste of football. And I came home with this equipment, and my mom, she said she couldn't believe. She goes, "Where'd you get that?" I said, "Well, this team in the back's practicing, and they asked me to join, and I said yes. And next thing I know, I'm on a football team." And I only got to play in like 2 or 3 games. They were towards the end of the season, but it was a fun 2 or 3 games. And that was my first taste. And then I didn't play for grade 4 or 5. And next time because where we moved to, they didn't have football. My dad got transferred. Well, actually, we went to Michigan, while my dad went to Vietnam for a year. But it was like 2 football seasons. So I didn't play football. It wasn't again until I put the pads on, was grade 6 in Georgia. My dad got transferred to Georgia, the state I was born in. And that was the next taste of football, grade 6, 7, and 8. And it was good football. And everything had weight classes. So I'd outgrown a weight class after my first 2 years, grade 6, 7. And in grade 8, I went and played on an Air Force-based team that had a higher weight class. And then from there, my formative, really good years came right after that, when I went to high school, where I had really good coaching. I got to watch myself on video because they videotaped the football games, and they had training tapes. Don Shula was sponsored by Coca-Cola, and he had his players, and they were doing fundamental type stuff. So we put the 8mm on the screen, and it was a lot of fun. And that was kind of where I got hooked for good. And as I progressed, I improved and got a little bit bigger each year and a little bit better, and just went through those kind of stages of progression until the end of my high school. We had what was called a spring jamboree. We always had spring football, but we would play amongst the schools within the area that I lived. And my school was in Macon. We were living in Warner Robins, which was about 15 miles, 15, 20 miles south of Macon. We used to bus into school. A whole lot of us used to bus into school. It was a Catholic school that I went to, Mount DeSales in Macon, Georgia. And we played in this jamboree and did very well. And we were in a very small class because our whole school, our student body was less than 400 students. And we were
Wow.
playing schools that had like 2,500 students, 1,200 students. So they were in a higher class, like a 4A. But we were in a class C, and then we got bumped up to a class A. But during that jamboree, a guy that became famous. He was a well-known coach, Jerry Glanville. He was at Georgia Tech, and he saw me and wanted me to come play fullback for their team. And so at that point, I started getting recognized from Georgia Tech and Georgia, University of Georgia, and they were keeping tabs on us. But we had a very successful high school football team. We had a very good program. We won 3 state championships while I was there, and I got an offer to play football, a scholarship offer where full ride,
Hmm.
tuition, room, board, food, the whole shebang. So that happened my at the end of my senior year, and I ended up taking a scholarship offer to Georgia, University of Georgia,
Do
and
you
that was
find, or do you think in any way, because you moved around quite a bit as a young man or a boy, the fact that your father was serving overseas, including in Vietnam, that did the camaraderie of football, of being on a team, those sorts of things, help you build as a man?
like I said, when I went to the high school level, grade 9, and it was a lot of discipline. It was a lot of camaraderie. It was a lot of teamwork. Teamwork makes the dream work. And we had a very, very successful football program, and that is kind of contagious. We had some good leaders. I had some very There was a lot of guys on that team that were seniors when I was a grade 9, and I made the varsity team my grade 9 year, and we lost our very first football game. And from that game, I never lost a football game after that, a high school football game. Um, I was undefeated at Mount DeSales, and we won the state championship that year. We were 13-1. The next year, we were 14-0. Then my dad got transferred to Germany, and I didn't play at that high school. I played in Germany on another football team, the Wiesbaden. We were the Wiesbaden Warriors.
Mhm.
And we did well there too. We didn't win the championship. We lost the championship game, believe it or not, 4-0, 2 safeties. Um, but I had a good year there. And then because my dad was stationed there, I kept I wanted to stay at Georgia, but he said, no, you're going to come over and you're going to live over there with us. But my senior year, he finally was convinced that I should go back. I convinced him that I should go back to the same high school that I was at, uh, and go to school and try to get a scholarship. So I lived with a family in Macon, Georgia, and they kind of took me in as a boarder, and I became like a son to them. And they had 3 young boys. One wasn't even in school, and 2 younger ones, not younger than the one not in school, but they were like grade 3, grade 1, and not even kindergarten. So I lived with them that year while my parents lived in Germany, which was quite the experience. Because
And Ben, is this with your siblings too, or your other
I had siblings myself from my real family. I had 2 sisters and 2 brothers younger than myself. I was the oldest of 5, and they were all in Germany while I left the house and went and went to Macon and lived with this family. But I would come back at Christmas and I would come back at summer, and I would stay the summers, and I came back at Christmas holidays. During that time, I was staying there, and then I got a scholarship. And my freshman year in university, my parents were still in Germany, but I would leave and come back. I would at the end of the semester. My freshman year, I came back for Christmas, and at the end of my freshman year, I went back for the summer, and then came back. Then he got transferred to Alabama, Montgomery, Alabama, and I came back with him then. And but I was entrenched in the whole thing. So I was at the University of Georgia. I made the varsity there. And then through the spring practice, I wasn't a starter my freshman year at Georgia, but I was my sophomore, junior, and senior year. I became a starter my sophomore year, uh, and we had a very successful program at Georgia while I was there. We went to the Cotton Bowl my sophomore year. We went to the Sugar Bowl and played for the national championship against Tony Dorsett, Pittsburgh Panthers. My junior year, and my senior year, we didn't do so well. We were in the toilet bowl.
Hey, Ben, it takes an incredible amount of discipline and determination to get to where you are. You're the GOAT. I mean, you are the greatest of all time. And there's so many accolades beside your name. And I just want to know, did you have like a social, like, what was it like? Was this from your dad, the discipline you get from your dad? And did you have a social life? And tell us about that.
I had a big social life. Yeah, it became more social when I went to university. The best 4 years of my life. When you don't have parents, you don't have a curfew. I mean, we had a curfew, but
you broke it.
It was self-discipline, right? Yeah, and that was yeah. And I had a very loving mom. I had a very strict father, military style, but very fair. Like, I'm so glad I had that. Otherwise, because you can go stray, you can stray off, right? And I had younger siblings too that they looked up to. So I had a responsibility there to kind of lead by example. But it was quite the, it was, it, I've had a Cinderella life. There's no question about it. I played through some injuries. I had some injuries. I got hurt in Germany. I hurt a knee in Germany that I'm going to have replaced this November, finally. That set me back a little bit, but I played through that. You got to learn to play hurt, I've learned to play hurt. And then Georgia had 3 outstanding years as a starter. I led our team in tackles. In fact, if you look up, I have still on the tackling record at Georgia, which I think
still do, right? It still stands.
That record, that record will probably stand for eternity, only because they don't stay in school that long. If you're good, they're gone after 2 years.
Right.
And they don't run the ball like they did back in the 70s, like 75, 76, 74, 5, 6, and 7. Everybody was running the football. They weren't pass happy like they are now, right? Mm-hmm. The balance. They don't have they didn't have, it was just old school football. So yeah, that's a record I'm very proud of. But I also had a lot of unselfish players playing. The scheme of our defense was set up for linebackers to make the tackles. So they took on blocks in the front of the line. So I had a lot of very unselfish players playing in front of me, and yeah, it was quite the experience at Georgia. That was, like I said, those were the 4 best years of my life.
Was turning pro any different?
Turning pro, yeah, you're making a paycheck. You're working for it's a job. I didn't approach it that way though. I approached it as, serious business and wanted to improve. And I had a lot of success. I had never trained so hard. What happened was I did get drafted in the NFL, 10th round my senior year. I thought I'd get drafted in the first 4 or 5 rounds, but I didn't. So I was deeply disappointed on the first day of draft where my name wasn't called by any team. And a 10th round pick is probably, towards the end, that they're not really, you're just going in to be a body at training camp if you're a 10th round pick. But I got picked by the Chicago Bears, 10th round. Walter Payton was on that team, who took a shine to me. And I had a very good training camp, I would say, but it was different than Georgia because of the schemes. It was very, it was a lot of education, a lot of adjustments that you had to make based on formations you would see. And I wasn't really, and I thought I'd make the team and I would work into that. And I would make the team on special teams, but that didn't work out. They needed players that could play. And Buddy Ryan was the defensive coordinator. And Buddy Ryan had a philosophy: you can play rookies, you just can't win with them. However, I thought I had an outstanding camp. I got to play one exhibition game, the first exhibition, which was I still remember. We played against the Oakland Raiders, and on the other side of the field at Soldier Field, there was the famous coach John Madden, and their quarterback was from Alabama, Kenny Stabler.
Oh my
goodness. They put Stabler in at the end of the game, and I got put in at the end of the game. And they called the blitz, so I got to blitz Kenny Stabler. And a second earlier, I would have had a sack. Would get to hit him. He throws the ball, he sees me, throws the ball. I get to push him. That was quite the experience. And then the day later, after that game, I was cut. Now that was the first football. Now that was an all-time low in my life.
Now it's the first time that's happened to you.
That's the first time I ever got cut from a football team since I was in grade 6.
Wow.
Didn't get cut in high school. Didn't get cut in Georgia. Not that you get cut, you're just not a starter.
Yeah.
And I wasn't expecting to be a starter my first year in the NFL, but I was expecting to make the team. And but I didn't.
What happened?
What happens when you get cut in the NFL? I don't know what it is like today, but you go what's called a waiver list.
Yeah.
So the waiver list back in '78 was you go out on waivers for 48 hours. Anybody can pick in the NFL can pick your contract up. They can claim you as property, their property, and agree to pay your contract that you had negotiated with the Bears. Nobody claimed me. Not that I had a huge contract. So I cleared waivers after 48 hours. And during that time, they were kind enough to let me stay at the dorm we were staying at. And we were in a place called Lake Forest, Illinois.
Yep.
And it was where
it's about 4 miles up the road from where I am right now, actually.
Is it?
Palace Hall.
And if you know how Lake Forest is a very wealthy community. They say per capita it was back in '78. They said it was the wealthiest.
Yeah, that's why I live 4 miles south of it.
Right. I hear all the hired help lives up there too. So I stayed at the dorm for 2 days, and I can't remember who the player personnel was, but he says to me, Ticats, have you ever heard of the Canadian Football League? And I said, I have heard of it. I had a couple of buddies at Georgia go up. In lieu of playing in the NFL, they went to Canada and played. Prior to me being, I also had played in the Can-Am Bowl my senior year after I played, the first Can-Am Bowl they had down in Tampa, Florida. I played in there and I had a good game there. But I didn't know anything other than that. The rules, we were playing Canadian rules, by the way. So what I really liked about the Canadian rules is you only had to stop an offense 2 times, not 3 times, to make them punt, right? So you worked a third less, right? Or a quarter less, or whatever way you want to look at it. They had 3 downs instead of 4 downs. So that was and because
it's a passing game, they say.
Very and I had a very good game in the Can-Am Bowl. I intercepted a pass for a touchdown. But it's funny because there was 2 bowl games I played in my senior year. Played in the Blue Gray and I played in the Can-Am Bowl. And in both those games, for some reason, the coaches really didn't take. Like, I wasn't that big. I was only 205 pounds, 208 pounds, right? So they were.
But you're tall, Ben. You're tall.
I'm 6'1", but But what's funny is I wasn't starting on either one of those teams. I was a backup, an alternate on the blue gray game. And I did this. But I was backing up. So during the course of the game, it was early in the first quarter, about midway through, our defense was on the field, and I substituted myself in. I went in.
Yeah, that's the story I wanted you to tell. This is
Okay.
great.
So I wasn't starting, and there was a couple guys that were starting in front of me, but I was getting tired of sitting on the bench. I'd never sat on the bench for the last 3 years. So I substituted myself in. I ran on the field and took the guy that was playing that position out of the game. And when I went in, and I was on the end of I was like on the end of the bench on the sideline, and the coaches were down a little way. So I just ran in and motioned the guy out, because that's what we were kind of doing in practice. Okay, your turn, Ben, you get in there. I take a few reps at that. So I substituted myself. I did it in that game, and I did it in the Can-Am Bowl too. But once I substituted myself in, the other guy never came in and he was never told to come in, and he never did what I did to him.
That's great.
I know, wasn't that? That was awesome.
Spunky.
It was kind of sneaky, but at the same time, like I was making plays, like I was hitting guys. And at the end of that game, at the end of the blue gray game, which was played in Montgomery, Alabama, where my parents were stationed. So that was a cool thing. At the end of the game, the guy that I played across from, I think he was from where was he from? Washington? Can't remember, but he was like a 6'5" guy, 6'6" guy, and about 240. I'd go probably 235, 240 anyway. Tight end, because they were running. They were, that's how the offenses were back then. I kicked his ass all over the field. I don't like to say that, but at the end of the game, he came up to me. He goes, you're the toughest guy I've played against in 4 years at college. I think you can go to you're going to go to the next level. Huh. I said, well, thank you so much. I don't think we won the blue gray game though, that game, but that made me feel good.
Urlacher came from Washington State, but I'm sure it wasn't him.
He wasn't playing.
I just looked him up because he's 6'4", you're 6'1". But obviously, he's a household name for his Chicago Bears fans.
Yeah, I was like 15 pounds and 2 inches shy of being in the NFL.
Yeah, but then you went to Hamilton, which is
I got
for 10 years.
And my rookie year, I was in 10 games. I got selected for the Eastern. I was a Shenley nominee for Rookie of the Year, and I only played in half the season. They had played 4 exhibition and 6 regular season games before I show up on the Ticats. And so in 10 games, I was like I said, I made all pro my first 6 years in the league. So I had a great career. Now I did get an opportunity to go back to the NFL. Forrest Gregg was coaching the Toronto Argonauts when I was playing for Ticats. And he was up for a year, maybe 2 years, coaching the Toronto Argos, and he left and he got the head coaching job at Cincinnati Bengals. He called me up and he said, Ben, I got a nice, juicy contract, more than you're making there, to come play for me. I want you to play linebacker for me at Cincinnati. And I said, really? I said, I have to give it some thought. Can I get back to you? He says, yeah, but don't wait long. Don't think. I'll give you a couple days, and then I'm going to give you a call back. And I said, okay. So I called. I said, I got to discuss it with my dad. So I called my dad, and I said, Bops, what do you think about me going from? And this is after my 3rd year up here. So I'd been all pro for 3 years, Rookie of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, my 2nd year. I said, what do you think? Forrest Gregg offered me a contract, play at Cincinnati. There was silence on the phone. And he said, well, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I just think of it this. You're a big fish in a small pond, and you're going to go to a big pond, and you're going to be a little fish. So you do what you want to do. The money's great, but you're going to have to, reprove yourself all over again, where you're kind of, you're established and they kind of love you in Hamilton. So I said, yeah, that's true. So I decided not to go. I stayed up, and at that point I became a landed immigrant in Canada. I applied for landed immigrant status and became a landed immigrant in 1981. And ended up making Hamilton, making Canada my home.
Did you
Wow.
ever win
And
the
then,
Grey Cup?
We won,
yeah,
we won one in
yeah, they won.
86. I went to 4. We went to a Grey Cup in 1980. We lost to Edmonton. Went to a Grey Cup in 83. No, I'm sorry, 84. We lost to Winnipeg. Went 85. We lost to BC. And then 86, we beat Edmonton.
Yep. And
Wow.
that's the famous Harold Ballard bought the team.
Harold Ballard bought the team in 1978. When he bought the team prior, he was a rookie owner the year I was a rookie player.
That's awesome.
78. And the reason he bought the Hamilton Ticats is because the league, these boneheads, the league said you can't own 2 professional franchises in the same city. He owned the Maple Leafs and he wanted to buy the Toronto Argonauts, and they wouldn't sell it to him.
Uh-huh.
I think Molson's owned them, and they kept them.
Yeah.
I think that's what was happening, or I think it was Molson's at the time.
Wow. Hey, Ben, wow, this conversation went so fast. Before we end with our final question, I want to ask you, what do you miss about football? Because you light up when you talk about football.
Well, it's the relationships you build, your teammates, and you learn to coordinate with, either 11 or 10 other guys on the football field, all having the same desire, and that's win the championship. That's to go out and kick the shit out of the team you're playing. And then get to watch it the next day on video, and then go out and celebrate with your friends. Like it's that kind of camaraderie, doing something with a common goal, right? With a bunch of people. So that's what I like, working as a team. It was a lot. You did a little bit more when you were in high school. It wasn't until I moved to the university level that you only played one way, either defense or offense, right? And so it was that.
Why'd you stay in Canada?
Well, it was I had a job. It was a job, and I became part of the community, part of the Hamilton community at the time. And yeah, I did a couple of businesses here too. I had a cookie business. I'd with a partner that was also my girlfriend, and that went really well. But her and I split up, and I got the crumbs. She got the business.
Well, I thought thought you were going to say, because
yeah,
I thought you were going to say, if you got the crumbs, that you're in Hamilton, so you'd go and celebrate at Tim Hortons. But,
yeah.
The story for another day. Amy, what is that magic question that we ask our guests?
Well, actually, so usually, Ben, we ask, because this is believe in people, why do you believe in people? But I'm going to turn it around, because I want to know if you can let other people know, because you're so determined and motivated. Why should other people believe in themselves?
Well, that's what you have to look. You have to look at the man in the mirror, right? You should believe in yourself, and don't, and you have a dream. Have a dream of what it is. Follow your passion. You got to find something that you love doing. Otherwise, it's called a job, and it's work. Yes, it was a lot of work to be a good football player, right? Getting up and training and putting time in and eating the right diet and putting in the track work, the necessary stuff. And but there's rewards at the end of that, right? And so the rewards is winning. The personal rewards are you get recognized if that's what you're into doing, which I really wasn't into the recognition as much as I was into winning championships. I got addicted to winning championships as a team, right? Early on in my life at high school, 3 state championships, SEC championship at Georgia, and the ultimate goal is to win the Grey Cup when you're playing professional. It would be the Super Bowl if I was playing in the NFL.
Yeah.
But, you know, and we're going through it right now with the hockey. You know, we're down to the final 4 teams, right? And
exactly,
that's what it is. That's the payoff of all the hard work to sip from Earl Grey when I was playing in the CFL, and wear that championship ring, right? With a Grey Cup champion, or the national championship ring, or the SEC championship ring. Those are all really something that, you know, you can hang your hat on and go, yeah, we did that together.
That's amazing.
Not individually, but as a group of
as
people.
a team.
As a team.
Ben, thank you so much for being on our podcast today. We are really appreciative of that.
Hall of Famer.
My pleasure.
Hall of Famer, both here,
CFL
both in Canada and in Georgia, Florida, right? It was for Georgia, Florida. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks
very
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, what an interesting guy, primarily because, you know, we all know what football is when we watch it on TV, but the amount of dedication and drive and everything that you have to have in order to make it. And then what happens if you don't make it all the way? You make it another way. And I really enjoyed that half hour speaking with Ben.
Yeah. And Ben, I mean, he's got such an amazing determination and grit that, as a matter of fact, I'll just be completely honest. I do not follow football, but actually speaking to Ben makes me want to follow football. That's how empowering and impactful he was.
If you're from Hamilton, Ontario, then I'll just say, Oski wee wee, Oski wawa to you too. And, if you like Oski Wee Wee, subscribe to our podcast. We'll have another interesting guest next week for you to meet. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.